Hello, Siddharth. Hi.
I have.
Hi. Okay.
How are you?
So yeah, we'll be starting in a few minutes.
Sure, sure, sure. No worries.
3 to 4 minutes.
There is some issue with your
Is
voice.
okay.
Can't hear you well.
Sorry.
There was some issue with your voice. I could not hear what you were telling.
Oh, okay. I'll just check. I can put my earphones on.
Uh,
Hello.
Now is it audible, Siddharth?
yeah, better.
So attendees, thank you for joining. So we'll be starting in 2 minutes.
Sure, sure.
We have a lot of people
The
joining.
screen share is basically disabled. If you can enable that, I can set.
Oh, it's disabled? Okay. I'll make you the host. I think you can.
Sure.
Yeah, I think. Can you check? if you're able to
Perfect,
see
perfect.
this?
It works. Yeah, yeah.
It works? Okay.
Yeah. The screen is shared well, right? Well, isn't it?
Uh, yeah, I think it's you're able to see that.
Perfect.
Yeah, we'll wait for a minute.
Sure.
So, Karthik, I think we can start the meeting.
Yeah, just a minute. I think yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think we can go ahead. Start. Okay. I think there are a lot of people who are already joined. Okay. So first of all, welcome all of you to this NTX India's discussion forum. I'm Karthik, the co-founder and chapter lead of Neurotech X India. So Neurotech X is basically an international neurotechnology community with a mission of advancing the progress of neurotechnology in this world. So NTX India is sort of a new initiative which was started in August 2020. With that, we've had a lot of events with a huge vision of advancing the progress of neurotechnology in India. We're taking a lot of steps and we're working towards the mission. So hopefully in the coming years, we'll have a lot of groundbreaking research and also products in the field of neurotechnology from India and for the world. So we have had past a lot of discussion forums and events and also a grand webinar that was conducted in November. Hope some of you have attended. We had Dr. David Eagleman from Stanford and a lot of experts in the field of neurotechnology. So we are so happy to join you all with this in this mission of building the future of neurotechnology in India. So with respect to discussion forums, we'll be having weekly discussion forums. Last week we had Jason and Mark from Mind Effect, and this week we have a wonderful Indian entrepreneur who is working in the field of neurotechnology. It's Siddharth Nayak. So we are so happy to welcome you, Siddharth. And so I'd ask Dhanushya to give to introduce the speaker to all of you.
So hi everybody, this is Dhanushya. I'm the marketing and communications lead at Neurotech X India. Hi Siddharth. So today we have a wonderful speaker with us. He is Siddharth Nayak. Siddharth is a researcher and technopreneur trained in biomedical engineering and currently finishing his doctorate in innovations and sustainability at the Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. He has worked in various multidisciplinary projects and has won multiple awards and accolades for his efforts as an engineer and an entrepreneur. He has diverse research interests focusing on intelligent products, wearables, health technologies, robotics, and automations. Yeah, over to you, Siddharth, for taking up the session, and we hope this finds everyone insightful.
To start with, thanks to the Neurotech India team for inviting me here. It's my pleasure to share my experience and the journey. But at the same time, I wanted to bring in both the research aspects of neuromodulations and neurotech and the product/entrepreneurship aspect in this segment. So I wanted to caution even our young entrepreneurs who are getting into the journey of neurotech, and possibly I'll end up with telling what were my strategies to go through it. And of course, entrepreneurship journey is generally a pain, and the journey in neurotech is at least 100 times more painful than the normal entrepreneurship journey. So let me give you a whole idea of, give you a flavor of both success as well as failures, and how do we really look at things from there, right? So guys, I know like most of you are from this forum and you may know what is neuromodulation, but just for people who may not know, I'll just try to give you a brief idea of what is neuromodulation before we start going with my talk today. So basically, neuromodulation is any technique where we are trying to give some kind of stimulus such that the normal neuronal pathway has a modulation which could actually help in suppressing some kind of pain signals or some sort of signal, or in some cases boosting the signal, right? In both the ways it could work. And there are like a lot of modalities or a lot of ways you can go for neuromodulation. Like for example, ultrasound could be used, photo biomodulation could be used. You have other options like electrical stimulus. In general, people call it as TENS and NEMS and things like that. TENS is transcutaneous electrical nerve stimulus, and NEMS is similar to that. It comes into magnetic aspect of it. So there are so many types of modulation, and it could be done both invasively and non-invasively. So if you look at some of the famous invasive neuromodulation system, could be like of deep brain stimulators, spinal cord stimulators, vagal nerve stimulator. There are so many possibilities, and there has been a lot of progress in that segment as such. And basically, in theory, there are two games that we play here. Technically speaking, neuromodulation can have n number of application and can solve n number of issues, because at the end your whole body is being controlled by your nerves, right? So we could do a lot of things in neuromodulation. However, there are two schools of thoughts around it. School one, agrees that yeah, neuromodulation could work, and probably there is good scope of it and things like that. And second school of thought, it's like it's kind of just yet another, let's say, acupuncture in their language, right? So basically, thereby there are two schools of thought, and we need to be very careful on how do we scientifically prove it. And like at the end of the day, it's all about evidence-based medicine. So it's a hard journey, but at the same time, very fulfilling journey as well. So that's all about neuromodulation. You can read a lot. There is a lot of a lot of things around neuromodulations everywhere, and you could go about it. A lot of work has been done in the Western world, but in India, we have done some of it, but not a lot, right? We are still catching up. So, but that's probably something good, because we may come up with some solution which could actually help reverse innovation, thereby lower the cost of the whole technology rather than having a high cost, right? So there are good opportunities around this space. So now, diving into my topic today and what I want to talk about it. Before I tell you about what I have done, what I'm currently doing, let me start with the whole flavor, and at the end, let me tell you what I have done and what I've been doing. Okay. So now, to start with, it's always good to start with a story, and success stories are, the fun to learn about. So we'll start with a success story as well, and from that we'll go ahead. So now, if you see, the most recent news for a success in neuromodulations has been, basically a company from Israel, who has some base in US, and they have developed a good looking, very fancy variable brain neuromodulation system. And the major thing that it plays is for migraine, right? So that's the small device that they have developed, where you can wear it over here. So many people have migraine, including me, right? And it's very difficult to control migraine. You eat, kind of medicines, drugs, and all, and many times those pain relief drugs at the end are opioids, and leads to addiction and things like that. And it's a big issue going on in US at this point of time, and many part of world as well. But US, it's been projected well. So basically, it's a huge issue, and it basically a lot of people are affected by migraine. And this company called as Neuro Relief has come up with a good system which you can actually just wear it in your head, and it would actually send you some signals, and there would be a mobile application which could control and give you some data, and it helps you helps with modulating the signal, stimulating certain nerves, which they have mentioned in brief, and that helps in probably suppressing the migraine, and making you help with being pain free. However, it's a success story. FDA recently approved, I believe it was approved on March 5th or somewhere end of February 2021, when this device was approved for use. However, let's look at their story, and that's what actually will give you a flavor that it's for a long haul and it's not a short haul thing, right? Now, the founders of this company had a successful exit with a company called as NES. So NES is neuromuscular uh, electrical stimulator, if I'm right, something like that. So you can just Google on NES. They got a $75 million exit from that company, and of course, they started some work. They did something in neuromuscular space. It was sold off, but when after the person who purchased it exited NES, the founders were now free to work around, in an area by not kind of overlapping or looking at the IP aspect of it. And they started this company in 2013, after they already had a good experience with neuromodulation in the first company. So now, when they started in 2013, after an successful exit with $75 million in pocket, In 2013, when they started, they took a $5 million venture fund. And that's the money that they started with. They started to develop the product. And this product was developed by 2017-18, right? Of course, while developing, a lot of initial clinical trials were going on because a lot of regulatory aspects comes into picture. And then basically after that, only recently, with a lot of multi-site clinical validation, finally US FDA has given them the approval in last month, right? So that's the story. So if you see here, a kind of a founder who had an experience with neuromodulation in the past took about 8 to 9 years for the product to get into market, right? With an experienced team. So if you go and see the team of Neural Relief, amazing team that they have, right? From a product manager from 3M to a very good team they have. You should go and look about them if you are interested. So basically, a good device which can solve one small problem in neuromodulation space takes about roughly 7 to 9 years. So that's the kind of deep tech we are talking about here. And as I told you, the bigger component over here is not about developing the solution. I believe that was the easiest part, but the biggest component is getting it into market. So after you develop your proof of concept or prototype, which actually could solve the issue, the whole cycle of regulation and everything takes a long time. And that's where you invest a lot of operational cost as well as overall product development cost, right? So that's the first thing. It's a success, but I'm just giving you the first caution about it. Now, if we go ahead and look at neuromodulations further, right? So basically, one of the major applications that we know in neuromodulation is pain management, right? So chronic pain management is a huge thing, and roughly, if you look at the pain medicine that comes into the market, overall, they just like the pharma companies do spend a lot of money in the research for pain medicines. At the same time, a lot of people buy them as well, right? So, and plus many of them get addicted as well. So it's a huge issue when it comes to pain management. And as we know, since pain is basically a signal which is carried by nerves, neuromodulation could actually be a good solution for it, right? So you talk about right from your back pains to your migraines to your pains in your food, so on and so forth. So you have a lot of options around that where we can look at it. Now, if we look at the whole research aspect of it, a big opportunity for everyone to be here, right? So right from what we talk about brain control interfaces to right from kind of advanced limbs, artificial limbs, which could actually sense your electromagnetic signals and then do actions. So there's a lot of opportunities when it comes to research. So if you are getting into that track of research and trying to look at solutions of how to solve it and the whole research around it, amazing opportunity. But even if it is research, please do understand that these are not a research where you will be doing it for 4 years, 3 years, 5 years to get your PhD. It would be a long haul for you to really get some data and prove something in this particular field. That's the whole reason why even TENS, which was I believe invented, I don't know when, I forgot the dates and year right now, but way long, at least 4 5 decades back when it was started. And still today we don't know its potential applications. We still don't know what are the drawbacks of TENS. We still don't know how beneficial it is. We still don't understand the mechanism of how it treats, how it rehabilitates. I'm just talking about one small device which you can get it for probably less than $50 to it can go up to $500,000 as well, 500 to $1,000 as well. But even that kind of a small device, people still don't know the entire aspect of how does it really work in your body. So amazing opportunity over there. And plus I know a couple of people working in Arizona State University and other places where they're trying ultrasound to be used for neuromodulation and pain management. So and then again, there are some magnetic TEMS, transcutaneous electromagnetic stimulator, if I'm right. So huge opportunity over there as well for research. And mind you, please take a small area, finish it off, and if you're doing a PhD, get out of it. But if you're doing a proper research with a big team, then it's an amazing opportunity, but requires a lot of burning of money for both human resource as well as the experiments and validation. So I'm just giving you the caution here itself. Even if it is a research, it requires a lot of money. uh, though I'm telling a lot about money, but trust me, it will all come together when I get into some later aspects of it and talk about my journey as well. So it's a very critical component in the whole research aspect. So research, no doubt, it's an amazing field. A lot of things can happen, and probably it can solve some really pressing problems. However, please don't go by just some news telling that this can solve this. Though in research it could solve, translating the research to product is all about another big game that we are playing about, right? So that both have two different aspects of it. Now, if you look at entrepreneurship and products, that's where I have to really caution anyone who is getting into uh, product development and around neuromodulations. It's a very hard journey. So, as I told you in the start, if entrepreneurship is tough, entrepreneurship in neurotech, especially looking at neuromodulation, is 100 times tougher, right? Because you're not only talking about developing an intervention, but you're getting into the whole thing about clinical trials, clinical validations, so on and so forth, right? So there are but some strategies which I'll talk to you in about another 10 minutes, like what all are the possible ways how we could handle it. But let me here tell you about my journey, and that would actually tie up with the finance aspect I'm talking about. So my journey with neuromodulation started in 2010. So in 2010, I was finishing my bachelor's in biomedical engineering. So took up a project on stroke rehabilitation. So we were developing a dynamic splint, which basically could sense the motion, like sense the signals of the hemiplegic patient, and based on the signal, it would actually stimulate and help them rehabilitate their arms and slowly get out of the issue. So that was the whole project that we were developing. Of course, we were successful in it. We got a couple of awards from IEEE and things like that. So that went really well. However, it was just my graduation project to get my degree. I finished it. I quit. I finished my studies. I went for a job. I was working, I was working in the area of interventional pain management, incidentally. So where we are talking about radio frequency nerve ablation. So we would actually put in a small. There would be a minimally invasive surgery where we'll put in a small needle, and inside through that we'll be putting a electrode, and we'll be ablating the nerves so that the pain gets reduced temporarily for 3 to 6 months. So that was the product that I was working on. Of course, it was fun. I was really enjoying it, roaming around the world, and of course, almost traveled the entire India, right? So it was fun work to do. But that's when my life changed, because suddenly what happened is my mom got accelerated case of diabetic peripheral neuropathy. So basically, her right leg completely got numb. She was in pain. She couldn't walk, and her condition was really miserable. And that's when I took a plunge. I wanted to develop a product for her so that she could actually use it and get well. And that was the whole idea when I took a plunge, right? So I left my job. I joined my masters. Luckily, I cleared a exam called as GATE in India, where you get some stipend and support from the government of India to do your masters. So I did that for the lab support that I would require to develop the whole thing. I went into it, right? And what I did is, since I had to just restart my earlier work on stroke rehabilitation, because that was also neuromodulation, and I knew that neuromodulation could possibly help. And that time there were no studies telling that nerve stimulation can actually help in reversing or rehabilitating neuropathic patients. And that was the time when I was starting to do it. So we took we made a first proto. Of course, we tested and did all the safety tests in the lab. And when I gave it to my mom, first 4 week when she used it, she didn't respond to any stimulus, right? It was just like stimulating her nerves, but she didn't know what's happening. She didn't know even if the electrical pulses were passing on her leg. But of course, when I touch, I knew that there is something that's going on. But fifth week onwards, she started to move her toe, and that's when we saw the first thing happening where it actually worked. The whole neuromodulation aspect worked, and we could see basically her toes moving, her toes in her leg moving, right? So that's where we saw the first kind of success with neuromodulation. And it was not a regular TENS, by the way. It was not, we were not trying to develop a regular TENS, because there were a lot of drawbacks with TENS with regards to heat and all those issues. And so we were actually trying to, I can't disclose a lot because there are some IP going on around it. But what it used to do is it used to sense the body impedance. It used to sense the various conditions around the electrodes, and those, based on those conditions, the algorithm used to tweak the pulse, and that was the pulse which was being delivered continuously. So she used to use 20 minutes a day, and that worked well, right? So after 1.5 years of development, so basically we developed, it was a small, I'm not able to find any box here, but yeah, it was like very small red colored tiffin box that I put in, and where I put in all my electronics in it. So prototype took just 1 year. My mom started feeling better. We thought, wow, wonderful. If we could help customize the whole product and actually help one mom, we should actually go for and try and help many more. So that was the whole intention when we went ahead and started our first startup, Fiesta Innovations. So it was just a group of my friends who had done biomedical and computer science in the college. So we joined together, we started a company, and we were like, oh God, wow, it's a great achievement, great invention, so on and so forth. So you know how a person who just graduate can really think, right? So that was my thought at that time. And we went ahead, we started a company, we started to work, and that's when the reality stuck, that just one prototype, no one is going to fund you, right? No one is going to believe in you, that why can you really go ahead and be successful. I saw Sanvar basically in this thing. I know Sanvar through a fellowship that we had, so he can talk to you about what is entrepreneurship given his successful exit from his company. You need a whole lot of analysis and a skill set that could complement to really make it happen. So making the product is probably the easiest thing in the entire entrepreneurship journey. Post that, everything is very, very, very tough. So trust me when I say it's very tough. It's like 100 times tough when it comes to neuromodulations and neurotech. So we were like all pumped up and everything. Somehow we kind of played around and tried that we'll do something good and blah blah. Of course, we were lucky that we were getting some support, but of course that was not enough to really go, because money becomes the biggest critical aspect. Everywhere you do validation, you'll need money. Testing, you'll need money. You need money for your operations, human resource, it just goes on and on and on, and it's not like 6 months you'll put in and scale up and suddenly from 1 year you'll get funds. No. And when I'm talking about 2012 13, even BIRAC, which is a Department of Biotechnology Innovation Initiative from Government of India, they were not active at that time. They were just about to start their big grant in 2013 2014. I mean, and I'm talking about 2012 13, right? So that was a scenario, and plus we were at that time in a place called as Coimbatore and Chennai, and of course that time it was not so evident that we knew which grants are available and things like that. So we couldn't go for it, and we didn't understand how to go for it and how to fully project it and look at it. So at the end, what happened is we did some informal validation on about 300 patients by showing that the specification that we derived are substantially equivalent to existing products in market. And using that route, we convinced a hospital to support us and look if it is only for my mom that it worked, or it could work for many people. And we did a informal validation for about 300 patients, where we actually gave them this stimulus and see how it worked. And all of them were actually in pain, right? And we had our own protocols that we had followed, that these are the people who will be actually getting the device, and we'll see, and there would be some group where it will be placebo, and then we'll compare. And that was a small experiment that we had. Yeah, we got a good result, about 88 to 89% people were happy with the results, and we were like, wow, that's amazing, right? But overall, as I told you, entrepreneurship is a very big game. It's not like especially in neuromodulation, that yeah, you develop a product, you develop a prototype, you just try on 300 beta users and go. No, unlike your hardware or SaaS platform where this could have worked, when it comes to neuromodulation, it has a lot more challenges because this is an interventional product. It's not a diagnosis product or a screening product or something which could support treatment. No, this is an interventional product, so that thereby a lot more things had to be going around, which generally most of us don't understand, because as an engineer it's easy for us to build a product, right? So that's what happened. We had to finally, we gave a good try, multiple places. We were getting some awards here and there, of course, but it was not enough, right? At the end, you need to sustain and you need to go about it. And that's when things went south, and we had to finally shut down the company in 2016, 2017 time. So that's how tough that journey can become. It will have its own highs and lows, but mind me, highs are very few and lows are really really high. So you need to be very very clever in strategizing your entire journey, and at the same time, if you don't have your own money, you need to really be aware, like how are you going to fund this project, because at the end, if you don't have the fund, you are not going to get it, and small amount of fund doesn't help, right? So you need to know like how that small amount of fund that you may have can add value and accelerate your growth. So be very careful and very very mindful while planning your neuromodulation or neurotech startup. So that's my first advice on entrepreneurship and the product part of it. But however, let me also tell you some pitfalls, and let me give you some caution before I talk to you about strategies and opportunities that we could actually look at, rather than always seeing the negative aspect of it. But if you look at pitfall, of course, time is one big constraint. It's not a short game. It's not like you develop a prototype and within 1 or 2 years you can achieve the growth. No, even if it is substantially equivalent, it will take some time. So you need to really uh, put in your calculations right and see how much money and how much time you need, and be realistic, because though so at least if I tell you my story, I know that even if we developed a circuit, we developed a PCB, everything, out of 10 times 6 times it won't work, and we will have no idea why it didn't work. It's like same component, same PCB and everything. Of course, later we understood that that's because there is something called as quality management system through ISO 13485, where vendor management becomes very critical, and you need to channelize your components very very carefully through known vendors, where you can trace the components back to the manufacturer and not just go to your local store and buy it. So that we learned a little later. But as I told you, like you have to be very very careful in budgeting all these things. The whole game comes when budgeting. Second major important thing is collaboration. So when I say collaboration here, I'm not like joking about uh, you know uh, collaborating with hospital, but I'm talking about serious collaboration with foundations, research institutes, your own college or alma mater possibly, and right, and then a lot of hospitals, so that if you could look out and way where without spending much, collaborators add value to your product development, right? So you need to be strategically looking at it. Of course there would be delays, so you need to budget those delays as well, because whenever you're talking about research, academics, etc., there would be delays for like examination, this event, that event, this surgery, that surgery, just keep going on, right? So second aspect that I would say is cautioning you is about the time budgeting that we do with collaborators, and at the same time look at things as well on that aspect. A lot of your work gets done through collaboration, but it takes time. So you need to have your patience. So you need to have a method where you sustain yourself and your team when while you are building this product. It's not like you're gonna just get your VC fund and you can go for it. No, this is not that game that we are playing. So be careful when it comes to interventional neurotechnology. That's my second question to you. Third, I would always say that we always, um, have the biggest thing that I would say for such long journey is motivation. So what motivation is there with you that holds you for this particular product development? It's not easy, by the way. So if you're talking, as I told you, I started my journey with neuromodulations in 2010, and I've been building full time entire product range from 2012. So it's almost a decade now, right? And only thing that holds me accountable at the same time, motivates me to go on, is that I have seen a success story in my mom, and I know that it has a big opportunity. Only thing is, I need to hit the nails at the right spot at right time. Of course, now I am in a way better position than I was, let's say, 4 or 5 years back, right? So that's the biggest caution. It's a long haul. So what motivates you? Or you need to strategize separately, which I'll talk to you in the next slide. Like, how could you still build even if you don't have that big connection with the problem? So that's where the connection with the problem becomes really, really critical. Finally, financials and funding, we can always keep talking about for ages together, but then we need to really figure out how to get our work done with no to low money in your hands, right? So that's one of the biggest thing, is especially in India. Or else you need to be in a research lab, which where you are doing that as a research project, and then once the research kind of takes a good shape, you convert that, you translate that research into product. So something like that you need to do. So you need to have your own strategy to sustain and develop the product. So be very careful when you get into this journey, and don't just jump into it is my only thing. Though you can see a lot of opportunities, be very careful, especially in entrepreneurship. Even for research, I'll say the same thing. It's not easy game. Getting the approvals for your right from your animal trials to this thing is not easy. So even for research, you need to be really patient. Again, getting your protocol ready for clinical validation is tough, and that too for small changes. I'm not even talking about for a full product. So be very careful and be very mindful on the time that is required to develop such things, right? Now, when I say opportunities and strategies, this is where things actually become fun. Uh, Here is where you have to put your thinking cap on how to achieve it, right? That's the whole game, how to achieve it. That too in this scenario where you have low to no resources. So you need to really think out of the box. It's not like, you will tell that what I'll do is I'll build my product and I'll do some service startup in the side. Seldom works in the initial stages. Probably in the later stages, post your 5 6 years, yeah, it may work. But in the initial stage, when you're developing a very serious product, it doesn't work. So you can't actually have a service startup and you do this. It's kind of, I don't know. Some may do it, but it's a very difficult ball game to play with. So you need to now strategize. How do you enter the market without spending so much of time and still getting money in the bank, so that it could actually become an incremental innovation leading to finally what you want. So you have to divide your product such that in the first stage, it has an easier market entry with lower barriers on regulation, lower barriers on other things. Then you iterate, improve. So as you get your profit, as you get your further investment, as you get your further grants, you can do it. So you need to really look at things in a stratified way and very structured in approach. And you cannot go for like, okay, directly I'm gonna make something which is gonna do this thing. It's people can do it, but very difficult job. Or you need to have a very big kitty in your hand, so that money doesn't stop you. At the end, money becomes a bottleneck. And I could tell you from my experience that when money doesn't come for a long time, even your team starts get disbanded, right? So it's a very critical component in the whole picture. Though they may be motivated everything, but at the same time, for survival, you need money, right? So you need to really balance this act. So how do we look at these strategies, right? So easiest way is, can you build around your technology something which could probably do a screening of a disease? You need to be focused on the disease. If you tell in the initial stage to people that, yeah, you are making a device which could work for this, in the initial days, no one is going to support you, because it's too good to be true for them, right? Though it could actually work, but for them, it will feel like you're not focused and so many other things. So in the initial days, you need to talk about focus. You need to talk about one small thing your device is going to do. It could be and avoid the intervention space in the start. You can eventually build your interventional product in 4 to 5 years time, because by the time you may have launched your 3 or 4 products and the money gets in your increases your valuation, you get some funding from your P or VCs or any other sources that you're looking at, and then you can incrementally reach your interventional product of your dream in, like, say, a couple of years. But then, as I told you, it's a strategy for entrepreneurship, so where you could actually look things in a microscope and see what is the smallest thing that I can build and add value to the ecosystem, right? So that's the easiest way how you could do an entrepreneurship within this space. And in the research also, I would say the same thing. Please target the smallest thing that you could do in your research, which could give you a new finding and your probably a degree or whatever you're trying to do at that particular time. So your focus and your scope of work is the most critical aspect in strategizing how do you go about your overall product development. As I told you, it can be a very big dream, but you need to really plan your dream and map your project to go there. So that's what I would say. But in opportunities, of course, there are huge research opportunity right from quantifying pain. So we are looking at that space as a company where we are trying to quantify pain in some time, but it's a huge issue about quantification of pain, because interventions cannot be really developed without understanding the pain aspect of it. So your pain pathways are still being studied. So a lot of opportunity around there, both invasive and non-invasive. Plus, there are a lot of issues of nerve degeneration due to the aging population. So now, if you see globally, most of the countries have a higher number of aging population, which actually leads to a lot of burden to the economy due to the healthcare cost that comes around it. So a lot of scope around it. So be careful around that. The opportunities are there, but then choose the smallest thing that can actually add the most value, both for you and for the ecosystem. Only then it could be a sustainable thing, right? So if you start thinking very big, good, but present to others in a very, very small way. You can always present your vision. That's fine, but what you are doing should be a small aspect of it. So that's one of the key things that I would like to tell and give you a caution around. Uh, yeah, so pain research has been there for a while, and you need to look at it. It becomes easy. So now I'll just quickly kind of wrap up talking about where am I in this journey, and what can you expect to hear from us, hopefully in a very short time. So basically, as I told you, our first startup we had to stop in 2016, 17, right? I was doing my PhD at IISc Bangalore, like I'm about to finish hopefully soon. We never know when we finish PhDs, but yeah. Uh, the whole idea for my PhD was to understand the mistake and look at the strategies of how to go about it. So luckily, I had a good supervising team and things like that who supported me in looking at it. So we developed a framework which could actually help in developing innovations around this space. Hopefully that would be also published soon. So you'll all you can have a look at it once it comes out. But then the whole idea that we started is my life again changed with Ink Talks, where I actually spoke to someone who really changed my views and wanted me to look at all this work once again after a break of 1 year. And we started our company once again. We started to look at things. We didn't, of course, what we built is very critical, so that becomes the base of our new company. But then we started to look at things, as I told you, in a structured way, such that we started entering into the wellness space, and we decided that we'll be building incrementally and finally reaching the space where our medical technology, our intelligent platform that we are developing could monitor progression of neurodegeneration, prevent neurodegeneration, and support intervention as well. So all the three gets covered. So a completely holistic solution. But the first product that's going to come out hopefully by mid of next year is a wellness footwear that we have developed for with sensors in it, which could actually quantify a lot of components around neurodegeneration, and our digital twin models and AI models that we are developing would actually look into the progression of neuropathy, Parkinson's, and some diseases around that. So it's basically we have developed a platform product now, which is highly scalable. And in fact, this whole platform would also be opened up with an API access to other people in the neurotech space who could actually plug in their hardware system and use our models to actually develop their easily, right? So that it could be an accelerated development, and we could work as an ecosystem. So that's where we are heading towards. Yeah, hopefully you'll be hearing a lot from us soon in next couple of months. And yeah, we would be finishing our minimum viable product by hopefully May end, if Corona doesn't disrupt the whole journey again. But however, yeah, we are in exciting times now, exciting space. But at the same time, as I told you, the whole lesson that I learned is really have a structured journey, and the best thing that you could do is plan well, right? So finally, thank you for the time. I guess I've taken 40 minutes, which was allocated to me. And and feel free to reach out to me for any sort of collaboration or any sort of co-research that we could work on. We'll be happy to listen with work with you and see how things can be built with a mutually beneficial scenario. I have put in my email ID if you would like to really reach out. Thank you. And thank you so much.
Yeah, I think, thank you, Siddharth. Like, this was sort of a different discussion in the forum compared to the past forums. It's all about entrepreneurship and an Indian entrepreneur who's sharing his experience. So even though the company was closed, you're like guiding India and also getting Indian entrepreneurs who are in the neurotech space are going to come up. I think we have also some entrepreneurs here. I think our Suhaila Kapoor, she's an advisor of NTX India, and she's the founder of HealthSafe today. And myself, I'm leading a neurotech startup, founder of a neurotech startup called NeuroStellar, currently in IIT Madras. And I think we also have yeah, maybe as far as I know, I think Ramya is there. I think she's the founder of StimVeda Neuroscience. And yeah, so there are a lot of entrepreneurs here who have learned a lot from this session. So yeah, thank you so much. So I'd like to ask participants if they have any queries, kindly switch on your video and also your audio and ask your questions directly to Siddharth.
I can see one question from Shilpa, like, I would like to get your opinion on how the research or product development into neuromodulation as an intervention for neurodegenerative diseases currently. Okay, interesting question. So basically, if you look at it, currently, there would be some diagnosis that would have happened, and based on the diagnosis, the clinician would basically prescribe some treatment method. Now, for example, if I take Parkinson's, in the initial stages, they will try all the exercises, all the assistive aids that you have, so that tremors can be controlled, or your slowness in motion can be controlled and things like that. But if it goes to a extreme where tremors are frequent and it's kind of unstoppable, then they can go for kind of deep brain stimulation or something. But in all this picture, the biggest problem that is there is no closed loop in this thing. People really don't know when the when the medication's effect is worn out, or people don't know what is the pattern in which the things are happening. When is this happening? Is it related to stress? Is it related to any other parameter in the body? So that's where currently the entire neurological degeneration scenario is. So a lot of it is basically kind of a arrow in a like throwing an arrow in a dark spot and probably hitting the right space. But again, a lot of other things are being tried out, but that's how currently most of it is done. Neuropathy, basically, no one knows how really things work. So specifically, if you look at it, they give you some kind of medication, which would be mostly vitamin B. Uh, but again, as I told you, like nothing serious happening in the space at this point of time. And one of the major reason is because it takes a lot of time to create evidence and get it into practice. So it all depends on the physician who's treating and his or her experience in that space, and they would give you that modality. That's the current scenario of it.
The reason why I asked that question is because I'm currently working on motor neuron disease. I'm more into the into motor neuron disease.
Right.
I'm more into molecular neuroscience. The reason why I was asking about neuromodulation is because so far we've been only trying to aim at sort of getting in a late stage diagnosis, which itself sort of is a huge trouble. And then I was recently very interested in the whole aspect of neuromodulation because I got to read this book where brain can change. So I really wanted to know if even in the late stage, by modulating some signaling, is there a way where we could start, even though some part of it is degenerated, could I use the rest of the working part of brain to sort of, direct towards that, which is why I asked that question.
Of course, we can. So that's how the deep brain stimulation is being worked, right? So it comes at a very advanced stage, and they try to control, right? You
Yeah.
can. And again, as I told you, neuromodulation doesn't mean that you need to stimulate using some physical signal. It could be a drug itself, right? The
Yeah.
drug can target neuromodulation. So it can be anything. But the whole point is research is a bit slow, money is less, so it's about the balancing act, about your aims and your motivation and the development aspect. So you need to really balance this out. So that's the whole point
Yeah.
of it.
Okay. Thanks,
Hi,
Priya.
Siddharth. Can I come in for a moment here? I'm Suhaila, and I think Shilpa's question is really interesting. And I think where she's coming from is a very valid point, because I think, especially in context to the whole Indian population, where diagnosis is really late, the awareness is extreme. It's very, very poor. It's very abysmal. And, also, the time of research intervention and when research comes into India finally is also extremely late. So I think it's a really valid question in terms of context to the whole Indian scenario. And Shilpa, just to your point, since you're already working in molecular neuroscience, and I really like the fact that Siddharth pointed out that, neuromodulation isn't always, like mechanical devices. It can be also, say a drug. You should definitely look at, like stem cell activated therapy in different parts of the brain where the brain's plasticity is being, enhanced and utilized. Even in fairly advanced stages of like degeneration. So even if it's like MND, if it's, AD, if it's PD, and despite the person's age, there is still a plastic potential the brain has, which can be activated and enhanced using different molecular therapies, and of course combined with say either like DBS, TMS, whichever ones, through a clinical trial. But I do see a lot of potential in pharmacotherapy or like drug based like neuromodulation in advanced stages where probably there is a more acute requirement. It's not like you don't have enough time, there is not enough plastic potential left in the brain. Just wanted to add this bit because I have been very involved in stem cell therapy and like endogenous stem cell therapy and activations of endogenous stem cells within the brain, and we do see this in stroke. And I think Siddharth also mentioned the fact that he had worked in stroke. So the brain's endogenous stem cells can be activated even in very advanced stages of disease, to try bring in some amount of compensation and some amount of plasticity. So there are some interesting research articles out there which you could probably explore, and I'm happy to connect with you later on and share those with you, if that can help you in any way. Just wanted to add this quick bit to that. And thank you for a fantastic talk. I am also just started my own startup. I'm a much younger startup founder than you. It's been about 7-8 months. And trust me, I don't know how many of you understand Hindi, but जितनी मैंने चप्पल घिसाई है ना पिछले 1 साल में, I don't feel my entire PhD and my entire 10 years of research is not equivalent to managing a startup and getting things going. I mean, so like research is anyway very difficult, and then taking it towards implementation. But there is an immense joy. There is a joy on working on Good Friday, and even if it was what was Monday, Holi. I'm based out of Delhi. I don't know when these 2 days came and went. I was working all 6 days, including today. There is so much joy and there is so much ownership, and there's so much motivation. Of course, you need money to make all this happen. Money makes the thing go round. So which is another, like you said, we can talk about this for hours. But thank you for bringing this to the fore and this conversation to the fore. And I would love to connect with you later on as well. And, anybody else interested here, I'm sure Siddharth or I, or, also Karthik, who's been managing his own startup for a while now, would be very happy to connect and, just take the conversation forward.
Great, great. I think it's getting interesting discussions. I think is it possible for the people who have questions to just switch on their video and give sort of an introduction about yourself so that the community gets to know about you? I think it can start with Shilpa, and also Sunbird has a lot of questions.
Yeah,
It'd be great. Yeah.
Yeah, Sanva, do you want to introduce yourself before I take up your questions?
Oh yeah, no thanks. Sorry, I was in the middle of a workout, so which is why I'm not be able to switch on my video, but I was attentively listening. Thank you for that, Siddharth, and the rest of the community as well. So actually I did post 3 of them, but I'll just quickly ask them. One is that what is the current status in terms of mental health diagnosis and therapies, where neurotech can currently play a role better than currently what the default standard is. The other one regarding that, is there, Siddharth, you spoke quite a bit in detail about doing clinical trials in India. And the question that I had was that, would there be a need as per DCGI to replicate successful trials that may have already happened in FDA or EMA conditions that are, double-blind placebo sort of trials? And then the final one, which is that, is there a need to build an Indian population data set for EEG data where, our population might differ from Caucasians, which are predominantly otherwise the default data set on which a lot of trials take place?
Sure. So basically, all the 3 questions are very interesting. So let me take one by one. So to answer with regards to, let's say, depression or bipolar, so even this company Neural Relief, they are targeting to use their device that they have developed for the purpose of depression per se. But again, it will be some time before it can actually get indicated to be used, right? So the whole point is your indications of use. And FDA works on that, like what are the intended use of your devices. So it will take some time around that. So, but again, people are working on it, but it's in a very nascent stage. It's not really reached the stage where it can get into market in anywhere near 1 or 2 years, right? So that's where it is. With regards to diagnosis, we really don't need a neuromodulation for diagnosis per se. But at the same time, it depends on the disease. Now, if you look at let's say depression, I'm not aware of any studies which tell that depression can lead to neurodegeneration, because you can diagnose something which is degenerating, and in case of depression, the whole biochemistry that happens in the brain is different. So it's a very vague area at this point of time for sure. But again, they have other studies through MRI and all those things, where through imaging they come to know certain aspects of it. But again, diagnosing depression any day is very, very difficult. But yeah, treatment, yes, there is possibilities and people are working on it, but nothing in next 1 or 2 years. To answer your question on DCGI, so here is the difference, Sanvar. Like, if it is a pharma or a kind of a drug, then DCGI plays a very big role. But if it is a medical device or a kind of a variable system that is going to do this through some or the other physical system, Indian laws, unfortunately, is very vague, right? Basically, CDSCO is the body which handles the case. So Indian laws are very vague in it. So it's kind of very difficult to know what and how it is going to go for it. But however, let's say you have done a full-fledged trial in US or UK, and you are now trying to introduce it in India. You may not have to do a full-fledged clinical trial as you did it in US or UK. You may just do probably a smaller sample of clinical validation, whether it works for the Indian population, for the Indian physicians to accept. Otherwise, basically, if you're just importing the device, you just need a license to get it in. You don't need any further certificate to actually prove that it works and all those things. Not necessary in India, at least at the moment. We don't know what will happen after 2 or 3 years. But right now, it's like if it has been tested and everything in US or the European region, you can just get a license from CDSCO and import it in India and start using it. Until and unless doctors don't believe in it. So if doctors don't believe in it, then to just prove, you need to have a clinical validation. So that's the status currently happening. However, if you look at countries like Brazil, they have their own set of rules, and if even if you have a USFDA or a CE, it's not enough. They need to have a validation in Brazil as well to get into it. So it's all geography specific. So India, it's much more easier right now, but at the same time, very vague to interpret. Finally, when you talk about EEG data for Indians or South Asians, makes sense because the way we think the whole part is totally different. The way the whole thoughts that goes on into any Asian population is probably very different than Caucasians and other races, right? So it would be interesting, but then it also depends on why are we doing it. Like for example, if it is just to understand the physiology, it would be great. So it's a basic research if we look at that aspect. But if you're looking at research with respect to depression and other things, yeah, it would actually make a lot of difference in understanding the variations in the overall data set we as we talk about. But then the biggest issue, as I told Sanvar, is like who is going to do it, right? Because there are so many pressing medical needs, that no one prioritizes this. So technically, if you see a medical institute with a master student in it, like MD or an MD, someone who is doing their MD or DNB or someone, if they start getting into such research, it actually creates a good data set. But unfortunately, they all get into the pressing need front of it and publish the papers and go for that aspect. So that's where we currently stand, unfortunately. But it would be a great add-on for all of us if we have some more easy data in India, and we could actually look at understand the differences way better. So that's my take on the third question.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great. I think follow up to that, since you're working with EEG data and the startup, it's really hard to find a single database where Indian EEG data is stored. So we are trying to, the only way to do is to collaborate with many hospitals and get the data. So there are no a single platform for getting Indian EEG data, which is also a problem which needs to be addressed for people working on EEGs and Indian EEGs. Yes. Yeah. Thank you. So any other people who'd like to introduce yourself and ask questions to Siddharth? I think this would be a great platform to interact with Siddharth and also other people in the community. Do you have any questions?
Can I ask a question?
Sure, Sanvar.
Yeah, sure.
Sorry, because I don't want to sort of take up other people's place, but so Siddharth, just a quick question is that sort of any thoughts on Neuralink specifically? And I know that there's a lot of criticism out there for sort of with Elon. Sometimes a lot of it is just sort of smokes and mirrors, and sometimes there is credible things behind it. But just A, thoughts on Neuralink, and B is that even if Neuralink itself may not be an amazing thing, maybe not, but just by him and somebody of his stature getting into the space, maybe it might have a domino effect within mainstream finance and capital to be starting to get a bit more available and conversation to be a bit easier with financiers, maybe.
Right. So like if you see Neuralink, it's all about the brain-machine interface, right? So it is actually an exciting thing to look at, but it's just that people are skeptical about it, as Google Glasses had come some time back and how it went, right? So that's the problem with Neuralink right now. But if you look at its application for rehabilitation, its application for for prosthesis and things like that, a lot of things can be possible with Neuralink, and it looks to be in the right direction, and the intent looks really good. But as I told you, like any neurotech device, 8 to 10 years, we really don't know what's happening, especially in the platform aspect of it. So we can keep our fingers crossed on that. But it's actually a very good platform to start with if you are starting on it, because it gives you a headway onto the entire journey of your brain-machine interface. So, and at the same time, if you look at Neuralink and its application for depression, that also can actually happen in this. There is a good possibility where we can use those signals to model our data and see whether there is a person with any kind of mental disability that could come into picture. It's a good thing, but then again, we don't know till we really go there, and the cost is the next factor. Now, for example, even the the device which I showed you today, that would cost around 500 USD. So it's like we really can't say how things could happen, especially in the developing world for sure. I hope I answered your question.
Yes, no, thank you.
Yeah, I think there's another question by Sanvar. It's about what's the best book or podcast you'd recommend for an amateur on neurotech?
I guess you, Karthik, you should go ahead and tell.
Okay, I think there is also a book. Okay, so one book that really inspired me is The Future of Mind by Michio Kaku. I think you would have heard about it. So that is one inspiring book in neurotech. And also there is one book coming out from Neurotech X called Neurotech Primer, which will be released in 2021. It's specifically focused on amateurs to get a gist of the whole field of neurotechnology and what is currently the past, present, and future of neurotech. So that might give a great gist of how the neurotech is developing. And to add up to your point of the capital that you mentioned, I think, yeah, we had a discussion with I think the NTX SF chapter lead, Morgan, about the capital once. So there are a lot of companies coming up in the US, as you all know, since these players like Neuralink or Facebook are entering into the field. Now, there is a slow rise of neurotech capital in US and also in Europe. In some places, Europe is a great developing neurotech ecosystem. So capital, I think, because of the credibility of the players that are entering into this field, the focus on neurotech capital is increasing. So and for developing countries like India, it's a long way. So one day we shout out, and a lot of entrepreneurs come into the field of neurotech, and we give a shout that neurotech is in India, and we have to attract a lot of capital to India. That's the only way India or the developing countries can attract capital to the field of neurotech. Yes, that's my answer to the book and also the previous question that you asked to Siddharth. Yes. Hope I answered the question. So is there any other questions for Siddharth? Yeah, I think the session is very interesting.
I have one question. Hi, my name is Deepak, and thank you for the great talk, Sid. I just wanted to follow up on the Neuralink line. It seems that they are not particularly approaching the BCI from a perspective of a particular disorder or disease, and they seem to be rather like making a generic brain interface. How do you think that plays out? Like, would you say it's better to focus on a particular aspect and go about developing, or what do you think?
See, Deepak, it's all about money, okay? So if you have money, you should actually build a platform and let the ecosystem build applications for you, just like how Android worked or iOS worked, right? So you build a platform and let others come in and contribute in the development. It's much faster, much better, much easier. So basically, Neuralink is all about that. Like they give you a platform, so you have something to start with, build your stack onto it, and go for it, right? So if you ask me which is better, I cannot answer that. It's at the end of the day, it's all about people accepting what you have done and you having some good resource to actually bank on. So Neuralink, that was the whole idea, right? So they build it, and people actually build around things around it, such that they become the center of it. So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I have one question. Follow up to that. So my question is, if Siddharth gets back to 2012 or 2011, 13, and again he's entering into that neurotech space, can you say any 3 changes that Siddharth would have brought in the approach to his neurotech startup?
Question is for me.
Yes, for Siddharth, yes.
Okay.
One.
Seriously speaking, probably I would not do any different because it was all about the learning. If I wouldn't have done those mistakes, I wouldn't be here today talking about this. So you cannot really change the thing that you have done. You will do it again because that's the part of the growth, right? If you don't have some barriers, you are not going to progress easily. So even if I go back in 2012, I don't think so. I can do anything different if I see the way it was. Even now, if you see someone new entering, I'm sure they are going to make the same mistakes which I made, because it's very difficult to find the right resource. I know that YouTube and the internet has made our lives easier for connection, but still getting the right connection is very difficult. So anyone entering the space, I'm sure they're going to make the same mistakes which I made in 2012.
And if I can add this, Karthik, I don't even think they
Yes.
are mistakes. I think it is purely a learning, I mean, what Siddharth is alluding to is something I'm sure all of us go through who are managing their own, enterprises. It's like, when you want to build a muscle, somebody was working out while they were listening to the talk I heard. Uh, you have to give it opposition. Like resistance is very important, and that's what ends up building up, a muscle and a startup muscle, a strong startup. Um, there aren't mistakes, these are all journeys, I mean, I think I make a lot of mistakes every day. Sometimes I feel I don't even know what am I doing actually, but you just go with the gut. Some days it's right, some days it just doesn't make sense what you've done, and you're like, how did I even think of doing this? But I think it's about the whole process, and it's about even when you're coming from like say a research background, your mindset is very very different. Doing a PhD in say some university in India, never having to worry about funds. By the way, that's a very big problem because PhD graduates do not apply for funding in India. It's always PIs who apply for funding, never having to worry about funding, never even doing TAs. Like we don't even become in India there isn't the concept that you have to go and like teach anywhere. So it's such a controlled environment, and you're under supervision, micromanagement. Suddenly when you're on your own in a startup, and I do think IISc and IITs are doing a really good job, because I think they have encouraged some of their PhD graduates to convert their like thesis into like a startup project. And if it works out well and good, they have something to go ahead and continue with. And if not, they have at least learned a few very important lessons. Because unfortunately what's happened is that people feel that they're going to do research only for the sake of just becoming a line in a book. But how is it going to in the future go towards implementation? How is it going to affect like real life world problems, is something I think all of us need to think about while we are doing research. Even if I'm doing basics like research, it doesn't have to be always applied, but it's going to somewhere lead towards some application. And that means all those five like resources, which is land, resources, all of this, funding, money, HR, everything. So I think it's a lot of learning, and I'm really happy to be hearing Siddharth out speak. And I think you said it so well that you would have done nothing differently, and I don't think any of us, I mean, all of us, would. I'm sure, like, definitely, like, agree with you. And I think it's all about the actual learning and the actual journey, more than anything else.
Great to hear from both that and Srila. Thank you so much. Yes, I think, yeah. And one more thing is, I think I recently saw Siddharth being awarded with the Flexi Award from IIT Kanpur, if I'm right. Yeah, okay. Congratulations for that. Yeah.
For me, awards you should take it with a pinch of salt. You don't know why you have been awarded. Okay.
Yeah.
Till they have a 30 to 50 lakhs grant associated with them, it's very good to get that award.
Exactly.
Great.
All right. Thank you so much.
Just one final thing that I'd like to say to all of you, I think. Yeah. So regarding the collaboration that Siddharth said, so in India specifically, in terms of collaborating with institutes, collaborating with hospitals, people like me who trying to figure out how to collaborate, and it's been 1 year of journey to even find the way of collaboration. So when a lot of youngsters, young people really want to be entrepreneurs, find that difficulty in collaboration. So what we came up with an idea actually in Neurotech X India. So what we did is, so we actually spoke to some IITM professors here in IIT Madras, and there's a huge plan for connecting this whole Indian neurotechnology network. So they are super interested to get all the Indian professors, majorly in IITs and NITs, into this network of Neurotech X. And also I've been constantly in touch with top neurologists, psychiatrists, also neurosurgeons. They have a demand for getting collaborated with professors, and there is a clear demand there. So they are super interested in getting into this platform again for collaboration, for helping the whole Indian ecosystem. So there is a huge vision of connecting the whole ecosystem. And one professor, I want to say that one professor was super interested. He's a professor called Professor Srinivas Chakravarti at IIT Madras. He's a professor at computational neuroscience. So he's super interested, and he came up with a concept called Indian Neurotech Internship Network, where whoever is working in neurotechnology space, they're going to open up opportunities for internships. And students from Neurotech X India and also in multiple places in India, they're going to get to all those labs. So they have a clear demand for finding best students, and students have demand for getting into right labs. So we are taking baby steps towards that. So hopefully in a year, you'll see a stark difference in the way neurotech ecosystem is getting operated in India. So I think that part is super exciting because there are a lot of people who are interested to help. I think, yeah, so that clearly shows the opportunity for the neurotech ecosystem in India. So hopefully we'll be able to do some groundbreaking research or build some great products in India and develop this whole ecosystem. And shout out for neurotech in India and for the world, to the world. Yes. So that's my final note. And so thank you so much, Siddharth, and also Sohela, who gave these entrepreneurs gave a lot of advice for us. And I've learned a lot in this session. So thank you so much. If there are no questions, we can wrap up the session. So anyways, if you have any questions, kindly drop a mail at india@neurotechx.com. So we'll get back to you very soon. So thank you so much, Siddharth. This was a really exciting and a wonderful session. Hope you'll stay in the community and guide a lot of other people who are interested in neurotech research and entrepreneurship. So yeah, thank you all the attendees who are so interested and came to this session. Hopefully you would have all enjoyed the session of Siddharth. So yes, Siddharth, you'd like to say something, or you came to say something?
No, nothing. Thanks a lot, and hoping to collaborate with each one of you. All the best to whatever you are doing at this point of time. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Siddharth. Yeah, thank you all the attendees. Hope we'll meet you in the next week's discussion forum on Saturday. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Sohela.
Thank you.
Siddharth.
Thank you, everybody. Karthik, I request